Hey, good morning, class. Welcome in. I hope you're having a great time working through your Ancient Civilizations project. I hope you had a nice weekend. Today, we're getting into a topic that I think a lot of people are going to have fun with, that are going to be really interested in, and that is ancient Egypt. Now, the topic itself is unique, it's fascinating, and actually, there's so much of it that I'm going to split this into two distinct lectures. So, we're going to have a lecture to kind of kick things off today. Then we'll also talk about Egypt on Thursday as well, and Friday for my 6th hour. So, we're going to get into our first discussion talking about Egypt and how it came to be. So, let's understand this, all right? Uh, Egypt was settled around 5000 BC, roughly 7,000 years ago. All right, and it was settled by a group of people known as nomads. So nomads are essentially wanderers. These are folks that do not have a permanent home. Nomads are going to move from place to place. Over time, though, we do see that nomads, that when they do decide to settle down, they establish a settlement or a civilization. So you're going to notice that going through the deserts and going along the Nile proved to be beneficial as groups of people started moving toward this Egyptian area. So let's get into it. Let's talk about geography a little bit. So where is Egypt? So Egypt is going to be south of the Mediterranean Sea, all right, and it's going to have a location in the northeastern corner of Africa. All right, it is also essentially a gateway to the Middle East. It has a lot of natural barriers, so it has very intense and very hot conditions. That is, due to the desert. The desert is a difficult terrain for folks to live in. There are also mountains which provide a natural barrier. Again, the Mediterranean Sea allows access for trade. It allows access for ports. We're going to see the northern part of Egypt become very critical throughout history. And the biggest geographic component of Egypt, as many of you know, is the Nile River. Okay, so let's talk about why the Nile is so important. Okay, and as we take a look at this particular slide, you're taking a look at different kingdoms. So different reigns, different areas that were led by different pharaohs. So you have the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and then you also have the New Kingdom. And some of the New Kingdom even extends into modern day Syria, and that's the extent of Egyptian power. But let's talk about the Nile. Okay, so the Nile floods every year. All right, so the people that were living along the Nile, they knew it was like clockwork. They could count on it, and it was going to flood, and they were going to utilize that flood water. Why? Because it provided fertile soil for crops. When the silt from the bottom of the riverbed, which was full of vitamins and minerals, would flood the earth. Okay, so once that silt came in along the riverbeds, it provided room for growth and provided opportunity to plant crops. Okay, this was the lifeline for Egypt. It was everything: transportation, protection, providing food and water. It was what they needed, and you're going to see them time and time again utilize the Nile as its key geographic feature. Okay. Again, transportation route. It's going to be used for irrigation. It's going to flow from the south to the north. It's actually going to empty out into the Mediterranean Sea, and this is opposite of every river. The mouth of a river is the delta. So it's going to open out toward the Mediterranean Sea. And again, this is going to be a trade route. It's going to provide this awesome protection, but it's just a mammoth river. It is so massive that, again, it would take months sometimes to travel along the Nile River. Okay, what kind of food, what kind of diet did the Egyptians have? So the irrigation systems allowed for a watering of crops, and some of the main crops are going to include barley, wheat, and flax. Okay, the main food, and again, a staple for most societies, is going to be bread. All right, taking that flour, turning it into bread. You had fish, you had vegetables, and some fruits. Now, one thing that will kind of be interesting to note is that only the wealthy, the people that were your priests, your pharaohs, those that had significance within the government, these were the folks that ate meat. They were the only ones that ate meat. So people that were much further below on the social pyramid, which we'll take a look at in just a second, they did not have the luxury of eating meat. Okay. All right. So as we take a look at the Egyptian social pyramid, the Egyptian social classes are going to be based on wealth, jobs, and education. Okay, so if you're wealthy, you're going to be up on top of the pyramid. If you have a job, you're going to find yourself in a good spot in the pyramid. If you have education, you're going to be informed. You're going to have your say as well along the pyramid. Taking a look at the top, you had the pharaoh, who we're going to talk about extensively on Thursday, and we'll talk about the pharaoh's power. You had the high priests and the noblemen underneath the pharaoh. Then you had the priests, the doctors, the engineers. Okay, these are some of your upper middle class. All right, you had scribes who are doing very intricate, very detailed, massive amounts of work with hieroglyphics, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. And you had your craftsmen below the scribes. Below craftsmen, you had soldiers, farmers, and tomb builders. Okay, the pyramid builders were typically slaves, and slaves in the Egyptian system are at the very, very bottom. Okay, as you guys know, again, the slavery is the practice of one person owning another person. So it is the lowest level in Egyptian society. Slaves came from other lands. A lot of times, if the Egyptians were to conquer a neighboring territory, they would force slave labor upon those that were conquered. Okay, and they would do the hardest work. So understand this: the slaves that were doing the work, it was very difficult. It was under extreme conditions. They were mining gold. They were planting crops. They're digging canals. They're working as house servants. They're also, building pyramid structures along with those that are in the other lower classes. Those are your farmers, your craftsmen, and you're seeing a lot of work being put in for the wealthy and the elite. Okay? All right, so understand this. The Egyptians had a very intricate system with their language and their writing. All right? They developed a symbol system of writing known as hieroglyphics. Okay? They developed this language in order to keep track of a lot of things. The first thing they want to keep track of are government records, so laws, taxes, and the passage of time. Okay, and if you were a person of note or somebody that was a pharaoh or a prince, you're going to see very intricate, detailed hieroglyphics about that particular individual. Okay, this Egyptian alphabet was made up of about 800 picture symbols, and again, these are all representing nature. They're representing things that can be found, that can be seen, and they're often depicted that way. You're going to see a really kind of a devotion from the Egyptian people to the animal kingdom and some of the animals that were around them. Okay? The word hieroglyphics in itself means sacred writing, and this is very similar to what the scribes were doing with cuneiform in ancient Mesopotamia. Okay? And so again, the slide that I have there is a good job kind of illustrating some of the letters and some of the symbols that were represented in these hieroglyphics. Okay? All right, so lastly, kind of closing today, before we get into pharaohs and the government systems and mummification on Thursday, we're going to talk about language and writing. And a lot of these writings at first, they were being carved into wood or stone. Now, sometimes the problem with that is that over time, that wood or stone tends to break down. There's a lot of wear and tear from the climate. So it's there, but maybe a little bit more difficult to read. So the Egyptians are going to start to opt for a particular type of painting and a particular type of writing. And that's going to be on papyrus. Okay, so papyrus is essentially the earliest form of paper. All right, it is made from the papyrus reed, which grew along the Nile. These reeds would be stripped and then they would be crisscrossed and then bound into a paper-like thickness. And then you would start seeing ink that would essentially be splattered onto the papyrus, and you would have, again, the hieroglyphics being written this way. It became a little bit more efficient. We talk about innovation. We talk about technology. Again, the stone tablets, the writing in the wood became outdated. So all of a sudden, this writing on papyrus became much easier to see. After the ink would dry, it would be smoother. You would add color to it. And again, Egyptians are going to use papyrus, and really it's our first version of paper. Okay? All right, so that's part one. We are going to get into part two on Thursday. But again, keep up the good work with your ancient civilizations projects, and I will see you guys soon. All right. Thank you. Take care.